Okay, today I'm going to replace my rollers. These are now 2,500, 3,000 kilometres old. I can't remember exactly how long ago I made them. They're my own 3D printed rollers. They've lasted really well, but these were the first generation rollers I made, and some of them, you may not see it here, but they are loose around the bearing because I didn't print them tight enough on the bearings. But I've since found I can print them a little bit tighter without them deforming. These rollers are really strong. They're so much stronger than anything that I've seen purchased, including the Hunin rollers. These are made from TPU, which is the same material as you use for skateboard wheels, and they are tough. We're looking down inside the channels. You can see down in that one there, it's 1, 2, 3, all the way down there, and 4. There's no sign of scraping on the back edge of these channels. This is a new wheel that I've made. They're printed in place, so they're printed up to a certain level, and then the bearing is dropped in and they're printed over the top so the bearing's fully retained. This was initially made because the rollers were suffering damage from side loading with the way the suspension works. But since I did this, I've designed these little sliders here. These are caps made out of plastic. I've got one here, and I have printed them for the top, so I haven't got them on at the moment, but these are the main ones you need. And these have been great. They've taken all the side load off the rollers. Any side load when you come down off a jump, compression inwards just rubs on these plastic caps, which are very durable, and when they wear out they cost a couple of cents to print, and after a few thousand Ks they don't need replacing. The new Kingsong roller set now has little vertical rollers sitting on the side here, which do effectively the same thing. So Kingsong finally realised the problem and resolved it, but I did this before those rollers came out, and that's fixed this issue. And I have no wear on these rollers, and I'll take one out and show you the side profile, and you'll see there's no wear on the actual roller surface. Okay, this is a real close-up of the roller. You can see the layer lines there where they're printed, and you can see the profile over the top is really good. They've held their profile really well. There's a slight bit of variation you might notice on the edge there. That's where I stopped, dropped in the bearing, and carried on printing. Okay, so I've replaced 4 rollers. All of the other rollers are in perfect condition. It's a bit pointless to change them if there's nothing wrong with them. These rollers here are all spinning nicely. Not a problem at all. And these are the new ones. I have made the new rollers. This is a second modification I've made. These are 0.5 millimeter bigger in diameter. So I am mixing 24 millimeters with 24.5, or about 23.8 with 24.3, but they are just a tiny bit bigger, and they will probably take more uneven load. But I'm interested to see if that just gives me a little bit more tension in the suspension, less play for the torque, and also means less movement sideways inside the channels of the chassis. Because down here, down low, I'll just remove the camera for a minute, you'll see down here that channel, this channel here goes through the chassis, and there's a very small amount of room either side of that. And on the Pro, they modified that original channel. They took the same piece of material and just milled it wider, but there's not a lot of play there, and you do end up with scraping. So by making the rollers just a tiny little bit bigger, it just means they have to compress that little bit more before the metal touches. Okay, so I've wound up with 10 that need replacing on both sides. I don't have enough to do the second side completely, so I'm going to print some new ones. You can see from this one here, this is the second side, the wheels tend not to get worn as much in the center. They get a lot of tread wear, which they don't have problems with, being TPU, but the side loading comes from the corners. So in this one I've had a loose one here, 2 down the bottom here and 3 up the top here. So the extremities is where you're getting your torque, and it's putting a side load on these rollers. So with my new tighter rollers, I'm hoping that will fix that problem. While I'm here, another issue that I'm not really impressed about, it was resolved with the new motor in the later versions of the Pro, is this spring. You can see how rusty it is. While I've got it here, I'll put some WD-40 on it, coat it. That helps keep the rust down. It was just as rusty up the top here at some point, and I managed to clean it up. But you only really see this when you get it apart. So the bearings are ready, cleaned up with, first of all, with some WD-40 and then alcohol to get all the oil off them. Meanwhile, in here we've got our rollers being printed. We've got 10 being printed in there, and they'll get to a certain point where they'll be ready for, they'll stop and they'll be waiting for the bearings to be dropped in, and then they'll finish. Okay, so now we have the wheels printed. Unfortunately, I forgot to video the part where I put the bearings in. So I'll take these out, clean them up and install them. Rollers are all in now. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 new rollers. All the rollers are now tight on the bearings, free flowing. I've done both sides. It's time to put it back together, and that'll be the end of the service. And so here it is, back together, ready for a test ride. The suspension feels solid, presses nicely, bounces back nicely, very well damped.